look at how we can take a graph and move it either horizontally or vertically in a shift. So let's suppose we have the graph of some function, we'll call that f of x. And let's start at looking at vertical shifts, shifting up and down. The graph of f of x plus d, where d is some number, is the graph of f of x that's shifted up by d units. So adding a number to the end of the function will shift the graph up by that number of units. Similarly, the graph of f of x minus d is the graph of f of x shifted down by d units. So adding a number tells us we're going to move the graph up, and subtracting a number says we'll move the graph down. Let's start by looking at how we can take a table of a function and find our appropriate new function with this shift. The first step would be to figure out which row or column of our table is an output row or column. Next, we need to determine both the magnitude and the direction of the shift. Are we shifting up or are we shifting down, and by how much are we shifting up or down? From there, we'll add the shift value to each of our output cells if we're shifting up. If we're shifting down, we need to subtract the shift value from each of the output cells. Let's consider this function given by this table shown here, and we want to find the table for the function given by f of x minus 5. The first step is to identify our output row or column, which is our second row here. The next step says we want to know the magnitude and the direction of the shift. Since we're subtracting 5, that says we are moving down by 5 units. So we need to subtract the value of 5 from each of our outputs. So 1 minus 5 is negative 4, 4 minus 5 is negative 1, 9 minus 5 is 4, and 16 minus 5 is 11. So we have our new table here. We can also perform vertical shifts on the graph of a function. In this case, every point of the graph is shifted either up or down by the appropriate value. So let's consider this graph of f of x, and we want to find the graph of f of x plus 2. The fact that we're adding 2 tells me we're going to shift up by 2. So each of these points needs to go up by a total of 2. And then we can give a rough sketch of our new function. These were all vertical shifts, shifting up or down, so let's look at shifting left or right. The graph of f of x minus c is the graph of f of x shifted right by c units. So subtracting a number from the x value will shift the graph to the right. Similarly, the graph of f of x plus c will shift the graph of f of x left by c units. It's important to note that these are in the opposite direction than inspected. Subtracting a value shifts to the right and adding shifts to the left. Just like with vertical shifts, we can do this using a table. The first step, we would need to identify the input row or the input column. Second, we need to determine the magnitude and the direction of the shift. Are we shifting left or right, and by how much? We're then going to add the shift value to each input cell if we're shifting to the right, and alternatively, we will subtract the shift value from each input cell if we are shifting to the left. As an example, let's consider this function given by this table, and we want to know the table of the function given by f of x minus 3. First, we need to identify our input row or column, in this case, the first row, and the direction and the magnitude of the shift. Since we are subtracting 3, and horizontal shifts are opposite of what we expect, we're going to be moving to the right by 3. This tells us that we need to add the value of 3 to each of our input values. That gives us this table here. 1 plus 3 is 4, 2 plus 3 is 5, 3 plus 3 is 6, and 4 plus 3 is 7. We can perform horizontal shifts on the graph as well. In this case, we're going to shift each point either left or right by the appropriate value. So as an example, let's consider this graph of f of x, and we want to find f of x plus 1. The fact that we're adding 1 tells us we need to shift left by 1. This means we need to take each of our points and shift it in the left direction by exactly 1. And then we can give a rough sketch of what my new graph looks like. So in conclusion, adding a number to the end of the function shifts up, subtracting a number from the end of the function shifts down. Subtracting a number from the x value shifts right, and adding a number to the x value shifts to the left.